Karen called SWAT on me for feeding my horses hay at 5:47 a.m. She had no idea she had just called them on the future police chief. This was the same woman who had fined a neighbor $500 for parking his RV on his own property and forced another family to repaint their house because the beige was the wrong shade. For 6 straight years, Karen Mitchell had used the HOA as her personal weapon to torture the entire neighborhood. But this time, she had picked the wrong target. My name is Sarah Chun. I'm 52 years old and recently retired as a police captain from Chicago after 25 years on the force. I had dealt with everything from gang violence to white-collar crime, and after my husband died of cancer 3 years ago, I thought I had finally found my slice of paradise in Willowbrook Estates. I bought this 2-acre corner property with rolling pasture backing up to the state forest for $340,000 specifically because I wanted space and privacy for my horses. They had kept me sane during the hardest years of my life. I already had a small stable, but I needed a proper barn for winter hay storage and storm shelter. Construction was moving along beautifully with all the proper county permits and setbacks in place. Then Karen Mitchell showed up. She had been HOA president for 6 years and ran the association like her own little kingdom. She would measure grass height with a ruler and time people's sprinklers to enforce rules she had invented herself. Karen lived in a $580,000 McMansion with perfectly manicured everything. In the past 2 years alone, she had forced 4 families to move away with her constant harassment. I had done everything by the book. My barn application was approved, permits were posted, and the crew was working when Karen came clicking down my gravel driveway in her designer heels, clipboard in hand. "That eyesore is going to destroy our property values," she announced without any greeting. I looked up from the foundation plans and replied calmly that I had read the covenants thoroughly and my barn met all the requirements. Karen laughed sharply and threatened me with a $200 a day fine, citing some obscure bylaw about agricultural structures. She stomped back to her white SUV, leaving me more amused than angry. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Within 48 hours, Karen called an emergency HOA board meeting. She controlled 3 of the 5 votes with her hand-picked allies. During the meeting, she tried to retroactively change the definition of agricultural structures so that anything over 120 square feet would need architectural committee approval, a committee that consisted of Karen and her 2 best friends. I stood up quietly and read from the state HOA law. Any rule change requires 30 days advance notice to all homeowners and cannot affect projects already approved and underway. My barn had county approval and construction had already begun before her rule change. Retroactive enforcement was illegal. The room fell silent. Karen's face turned bright red. She stood up, pointed her manicured finger at me, and hissed, "I'm going to make life very difficult for you. You have no idea who you're dealing with." That was her second big mistake. 3 neighbors followed me outside after the meeting. Tom Martinez, a Vietnam veteran, told me he had waited 5 years for someone to stand up to her. Betty Wong, a retired teacher, described how Karen made them tear down their garden shed. Jim Peterson complained that his kids couldn't even play basketball in their own driveway because of her peaceful enjoyment rules. While Karen doubled down with daily violation notices, my mailbox was 0, 3 inches too close to the sidewalk, my garbage cans visible for 12 minutes too long, my legally composting horse manure was suddenly a health hazard. I was quietly building my case. I documented every notice with time-stamped photos and recorded every conversation, which was perfectly legal in our state. I also started researching Karen. Her decorative fence was 2 inches over the property line. Her landscaping blocked fire hydrant access. Her stone patio had been built without permits and violated setback requirements. When she showed up for another compliance inspection, I handed her a folder with all the evidence of her own violations. She sputtered that I was harassing her. I replied calmly that this was simply documentation, just like what she had been doing to me. I reminded her that HOAs lose their enforcement power when they practice selective enforcement. If they ignore violations for some but target others, their authority becomes legally invalid. Karen realized she was trapped and tried one last power play. She issued a $200 per day fine and demanded I demolish the barn within 30 days or face foreclosure. I looked at the document and said simply, "See you in court." She sued me for $50,000 in damages, claiming the barn would harm property values, and actually got a temporary restraining order that halted construction. While Karen strutted around the neighborhood celebrating, I dug deeper into the county records. I found the original 1987 HOA covenants. Section 12B specifically allowed for equestrian facilities and related agricultural structures. Karen's later amendments could not override the founding documents. I had certified copies prepared and brought them to the court hearing. Karen arrived with an expensive downtown attorney and charts about property values. When it was my turn, I presented the original covenants and explained how specific provisions override general restrictions added later. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. Then he asked if I had a background in law. I told him I'd spent 25 years in law enforcement, retiring as captain of the 14th District in Chicago, and that I had recently been hired as the new police chief of Willowbrook, effective in 30 days. The courtroom went silent. Karen's face turned ashen. The judge dissolved the restraining order immediately, dismissed her lawsuit with prejudice, and ordered the HOA to pay my court costs. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Neighbors who had lived in fear for years suddenly found their courage. They began sharing stories and documentation of Karen's selective enforcement and financial irregularities. Over $23,000 in unexplained administrative expenses with no supporting records. Karen's desperation grew. She scattered roofing nails in my driveway at 3:47 a.m., filed anonymous complaints to state agencies, tried to rally the city council against my appointment, and spread rumors on social media. None of it worked. Her final act came at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I was outside feeding my horses when I heard sirens. A SWAT van and 3 patrol cars came screaming down my lane. Officers poured out with weapons drawn, shouting commands. I set down the hay bale, raised my hands, and calmly identified myself as the incoming police chief. The sergeant in charge recognized me from a tactical conference. They quickly realized they had been sent on a false report about an armed suspect threatening neighbors. Security cameras captured everything, and the investigation traced the burner phone back to Karen, purchased on her credit card and caught on store surveillance. The story went viral. Karen tried to play the victim on camera, but only made herself look worse. She was charged with filing a false police report. The state investigated the HOA's missing funds. Her real estate license was suspended. At the emergency HOA meeting, the community turned out in force. Evidence of years of abuse, selective enforcement, and financial misconduct was laid out clearly. The county supervisor announced that the HOA had lost its corporate standing with the state due to failures to file required documents and financial irregularities. Karen no longer had any authority. 6 months later, my barn was finished. My horses graze peacefully every morning while children's laughter drifts across the pasture. As police chief, crime is down and community relations have never been stronger. The new HOA board, led by Tom and Betty, focuses on real improvements instead of petty rules. Karen pleaded guilty to the false report charge. She lost her real estate license permanently and was ordered to repay the missing HOA funds. Her McMansion sold quietly, and she moved away to start over in another town, where she has already begun filing complaints against her new neighbors. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. I got my peaceful life with my horses, my community is thriving, and the bully who tried to ruin it all received exactly what she deserved. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and share your own HOA horror story. You're not alone. And if you enjoyed watching justice prevail over petty tyranny, make sure to subscribe for more stories where good people stand up and win.